Welcome back to Your Day. Everyone wants to be the best version of themselves, but many times we're our own worst critics. Did you know, however, inside all of us, there's a sparkly, happy, one-horned, mythical, happy creature just waiting to meet the world? Joshua Kramer joins us this morning with how to find the unicorn in you. And it looks like your background is getting us in that vibe this morning. Beautiful colors there.
No question. Great to be with you, Amanda. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you wrote a book, and it's actually not a self-help book. Explain this. It's an unself-help book.
I've read so many self-help books, like many people, and I think for me, I discovered a way that could be less of a process and more of an approach that grounds us kind of in a foundation for being rather than doing. Because so many books are very, very helpful, but I think we in many ways need to simplify things. So this is a very back to basics approach, and as you said, an unself-help approach.
I like this. I too have read, many self-help books, and at the end, I feel like I didn't really get a whole lot out of it. So you have 5 tips for us this morning. So we're going to get you started with these tools to bring out the unicorn in you. And the first thing is to be emotionally vulnerable.
We hear so much about being emotionally vulnerable, about going deep these days. That's very in vogue. And I think for us, being vulnerable, the benefits are not for its own sake. Many times we think about how we can identify feelings in ourselves, but by being vulnerable, we can actually identify these feelings in others, which allows us to empathize better and develop a deeper sense of compassion and ultimately kindness.
Here's another one that I think is really great because we're all guilty of it. But if we were to just release our judgments, it would make a huge difference in, someone else's life, but also in our own.
Letting go of judgments, I think, is the first piece of the puzzle of developing a greater sense of kindness. We all know the adage of walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And I think for the most part, when we develop a sense of curiosity, in many ways use our sense of imagination to switch places with someone, it's easier to let go of our judgments of them. And that in many ways kind of frees us from some of these negative emotions such as envy and anger and sadness.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe even some resentment and you don't want to have that hanging over you and dragging you down. So if we just let go of it, we're better off for it. So I really like that advice. How about for me, not to me?
Well, I love this because the idea of gratitude is something that a lot of people work into their daily lives, whether it's a gratitude practice or having a gratitude journal. But I think developing this mindset of for me, not to me, something is happening in our lives that benefits us. It brings value to us, and it's happening for us, not to us. It allows us to not be a victim in circumstances. In many ways, makes us very mature and sensible and practical, and understanding that things can happen that we don't want, but we can find the good in them as well.
Yeah, I think when we say something's happening to us, like you said, it automatically makes you feel like a victim and like there's something negative with it. But if something is happening for you, we're able to look at it and say, what can I learn from this and how can I use it to benefit myself? So I really like that, turning it around just a little bit, for me, not to me. So another great suggestion this morning. Another tip you have is just accept what is. And I think sometimes we want to fight it, but maybe we just accept it.
Acceptance, I think, really roots us in reality. It allows us to understand what is rather than regretting what isn't. And I just spoke about being mature and practical and sensible. And I think acceptance is what really leads us to that, even more quick than anything else, because what it says is that I'm going to acknowledge there are things that happen in my life that I don't want to happen, but at the same time to accept them and allow in many ways to make peace with them, and allows us to also find the positive.
There's got to be a positive in there. We gotta look for it and accept it too. Cultivate awe is your last tip this morning.
Cultivating awe is something that we can all do. In many ways, I think it really has to do with developing a sense of wonder. The unicorn is a symbol that I've chosen for my book, and I think that has to do with being light and free and almost childlike. but cultivating awe is something that connects us with a sense of humility in our lives. And I think having humility is what brings us closer to peace and joy, because it allows us to say that we're not as significant or insignificant in the world as we may think.
You know, our kids are happy, aren't they? You know, so if we can kind of think about that, you know, their happiness in that childlike way, and unicorns and happiness, we can all be better for that. So great tips this morning. How can people find your book?
Please feel free to check us out at theunicornandyou.com. We're online on our social media, all those handles, as well as my site, joshkramer.com. I love connecting with people, hearing their thoughts and feedback, and appreciate the support for The Unicorn and You.
You know, and I think if even we can walk away, you know, start with one of these tips, you know, maybe work our way up to 5. We'll be on our way there and, you know, happier and better for it. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care. When WTOL 11 Your Day returns, lots of